Okay, you're depressed. Okay, cool. I'll challenge how much of your day are you depressed? Like, really be honest. I want you to track it for a few days. I want you to track every moment where you're not depressed. Like, and then also like, okay, I'm depressed. Cool. Well, where is this depression in your body? Like, where are you depressed? They're like, oh, I'm just depressed. I'm like, so your left butt cheek is depressed? Like, yeah, like, how about your right big toenail? Like, is it like on the edge? Suicidal? Is it like ready to fall off? How about your nose hairs? Like, how much of you is depressed? Where exactly is it? Because if they can get more clarity on what is actually happening, clarity begets solutions by its nature. You're walking through the dark in the basement. Your kids dropped all the Legos on the floor and the jacks. Remember those? And you've got to get to the bathroom. Well, if you don't have if it's pitch black and you step on one, you fight and scream. But now you're going to start moving slower and with your feet and the hands because you're looking for information. You're looking for clarity. Turn on the light. You'll just navigate it, no problem.
That's right. And that's your insight, right? That's your catharsis. That's your letter aha moment, is that light coming on. Yeah. No, and relapse is a big part of this too, right? Because there's no straight line to recovery. So even if you're battling pornography or drug addictions or whatever, it's like, okay, I stopped, but then I did it again and all the guilt and shame rush back. And I've had people who come in and go, man, I was 30 days clean. And then I used, and I think it's really disarming to go, congratulations. So you're telling me 29 of the last 30 days you've been sober? Like, dude, if you could stay sober 29 out of every 30 days, you never would have met me. Like, this is great news, and they want to fight with me. They go, no, it's bad. And I'm really bad because I had 30 days and I gave it all away, and it's like, no, man, you have to look at this at a broader picture,
No kidding. I actually take the ontological approach with a lot of these things, and I go, there's no such thing as relapse. Like, what store on earth can you have a relapse? Can I get a 6-pack? Like, you can't take it out on a date. It's a label that we've put on an experience. And as soon as you put the label relapse on an experience, with that label comes, I'm back at the beginning. It has the word lap in it. I'm just running in circles. I've lost all of the experience I've gained, all that other stuff. So anybody adding just that label to an experience, one, is lying, because that's not actually what happened. You didn't relapse. You looked at pornography, or you had a drink, or you used some heroin or whatever. That's what happened. Tell me what happened around that so that we can get clear on where you tripped, so that the next time you don't trip over it. I don't want to know that you've tripped before. We want to know about this one. And so there's no such thing as relapse at all. There's just something happened, and I want to learn from that, so that I had an experience. I want to reflect on it so that I learn.
No, that's good. That's good. And they always say turn a relapse into a prolapse. And I'm like, that's a different problem. I don't know if we want to turn anything into a prolapse.
I would prefer to, yeah, no kidding. Like, that just sounds like a medical issue.
Ontology is not going to save you if that really happens. Yeah.
I would say turn a relapse into a revelation, because if you think about it, when you're in a space where you've had a revelation, where you've had a deep insight, and that is now your relationship to the thing that was the trigger. I did something and it's quote unquote triggering this negative guilt shame cycle. But then as I looked at it, suddenly I had this like, wow, I never realized this before, kind of aha. Now you have connected that aha revelation with the event. And that means the event is no longer a trigger. So you turn a relapse into a revelation. You're literally freeing yourself moment by moment and event by event from all the things that would make you go back and do it again in the first place.
Right. There was a book I read. I'll have to find the notation for Ian to put in the show notes, but they talk about this cycle of cue followed by routine followed by reward. Right. So the cue would be what they'd call the trigger. Something happens, right, and I feel something as a result of that happening, and then my routine is whatever my routine is, and then my reward is what I need to have. Like, I need to have the relief, or I need to have whatever the outcome would be, right? So hunger, food, I'm satiated. I full stomach, right? I feel better. I'm relaxed. So you're going to want to feel relaxed. You're going to feel hungry sometimes. So what is that routine in the middle? And it sounds like a lot of your interventions would be based around, let's not challenge the cue. Let's not judge the reward. Let's just work on the steps in the middle there that we can do to achieve that in a more positive way or in a less harmful way,
Yeah. I mean, essentially, the way what I had to figure out was like that every thought a person has, every feeling a person has, the brain is not connected to the outside world at all. And so it's like the security guard, and it's got a bunch of cameras and screens, and it's trying to guess based on some data streams what's happening, but it's not out there feet on the ground. And so it's getting streams of data up to the brain, and then it's deciding what's happening. And then it's sending that information back down to the body to lock down the compound or to do this or to send out the guards or whatnot, right? And so what I had to learn was, if I give the security, if the streams of data going up to the brain, all of the five senses, all of the other cues, what the information in the body, if I engage there, then the body is giving different information to the brain. The security card can't make the same thoughts. It can't make the same feelings because it's only making those in response to dis-ease and discomfort in the system that came as an instinctive reaction to life. So what I went back to was like, I want to retrain my instinct so that my body is instinctively free. And then I'm actually free in my mind to think whatever the heck I want instead of battling my body's lack of freedom. So it was like, how can I bypass this tangled briar patch of the mind and retrain the instincts themselves, the biological instinct in these different environments? And when that started happening, the cool thing was like the freedom came on its own. I didn't have to power my way into the next thing. I didn't have to consciously think about the routines. I was going to practice, and I was training and teaching my body to relax a little bit more and breathing different. And I was doing that all day long because it was like cool. It was a fun exploration. And I was exploring like, wow, Homo sapiens 1.0 has this really, really cool feature. And what is it like to be alive? And the byproduct was addiction went away, depression went away, suicidality went away, anxiety disappears. And if it does show up, it almost gets handled automatically. And I like watch my body handle it, and I go, that was cool.
Yeah.
And because it's instinctive freedom as opposed to like cognitively driven freedom.
So almost streamlining the routine part, right? If you can change the interpretation of the signal, you don't need to have this long, complicated routine cycle. You can actually just not maybe skip it completely or maybe shorten it so you can get into the natural rewards, the natural instinctual response to that, because the instinctual response, in your opinion, is going to be more natural, and you're not going to get caught up in your own head and introduce all of that artificial, negative language.
All the talk on social media about like, this is my problem, and this is I'm here doing a vulnerable thing, like all that stuff gets bypassed really quick. I tell people freedom is a skill, not a pill, right? And so if you think about like learning to walk, in the beginning, it took a lot of concentration. I mean, you watch the kids, they fall over and they'd rather crawl because it's easier. But then at a certain point, they catch the knack. And then at that point, even if they do fall, there's no going back. They're just going to get up and they're going to run again because they can reach things they couldn't reach before. They can climb, they can get the cookies, they can make messes. And then the next step is, well, now I'm going to learn to ride a bike, and now I can go further, and then I'm going to learn to drive a car. And then, like the opportunities become endless when you treat it like living its freedom as a skill set, because the body develops a muscle memory once it catches the knack.
I used to do a presentation a long time ago where we would show a child learning to walk, exactly that. And what we focused on was the caregiver's reactions, because we were working with relapse and we were working on, responses to falling down and getting back up. And, and the child would fall and everybody would go, oh, and they were so supportive. You did it. They didn't say you fell. They said, you took 2 whole steps. You can do this. Get back up. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And the question kind of posed at the end was like, when do we switch from this supportive, you've got this, you can do this, every step in the right direction is a huge step, to that's not enough, that's not good enough? And we had somebody raise their hand one time and go, about age 13, which is sad, but true, right? That's where we switch. So that's interesting. And not only caregiver response, but you're your first caregiver. You're your only caregiver you're going to have your entire life. You're your primary caregiver. So what conversations are you having with yourself about your falling? What conversations are you having with yourself about how you internalize your own progress, right? Are you giving it yourself the judgmental voice, or are you giving yourself the support that you need to actually make progress and get back up?
And what I like about that too is, like what child would we deem as morally flawed because they can't walk?
Mm-hmm. They're lazy. They don't want it bad enough.
Yeah, I guess some people do that, but like
Right.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
into a NICU, you wouldn't walk into an intensive care unit and these babies are like that one's going to hell. This one, like we learn to see those things in other people, but they're not there inherently. And we just because we haven't learned a skill doesn't mean that there's some moral flaw. Okay, cool. Then they learn to walk. And the same thing, like emotional freedom and freedom from compulsive behaviors is another skill. It's just not one of the overt ones. So most of us are still in puberty in this regard. We're still going through the process of understanding that emotions are not things that attack from the outside. They're actually internally created chemical and mechanical processes of dis-ease and discomfort in the body in response to its environment. And as you train that skill set, it's no different than learning to read, learning to walk, or anything else. And so you're not morally flawed because you can't control your emotions. You're just a toddler. And congratulations, you controlled it for 3 minutes. Yes.
Right. You did it. Now do it 3 more, maybe 3.5.
Now do it 3 more,
and string it together.
And if that doesn't come till next week, cool. Well, we'll get it next week then.
Right. And that's where some of the viewpoints of addiction is not a moral flaw, but almost an out of control coping pattern, right? An out of control or negative attempt at coping. And that's why people compare it to heart disease. Well, there's genetic elements. I think it's more comparative to like obesity, right? Where because of the out of control coping mechanism, in this case, eating, in the other case, heroin, whatever, it's now created physical changes that are more of a challenge and a detriment to you and causing their own problems,